Welcome to the Success Sensei podcast for anyone interested in success, happiness, and balance. We'll teach you how to be a black belt at life. And now, your host, former professional fighter, multiple world champion, entrepreneur, and investor, Robert Devane.
Bowing in, this is Roundhouse Rob, the Success Sensei, helping you to win at life one kick and punch at a time. Episode 255, Risk versus Reward. Welcome to the main event.
It's the Success Sensei podcast main event.
Risk versus reward. This is something that everybody's going to have to grapple with that has any interest in improving aspects of their lives, or improving in business, or being an entrepreneur, or just looking for more success in your life. Risk versus reward is something that you're going to have to balance out and deal with and think about. So before I get into this as to what is risk versus reward and how to manage it and how to go about it and what your mindset should be, I am recording remotely, so the sound might be a little bit different. Apologies if there's any interruptions or if there's any traffic going by. Fairly busy day today, and I'm just trying to squeeze in the episode and try to keep the consistency going. I would absolutely appreciate all likes, any comments, any shared, everything that can help organic growth of the podcast is greatly appreciated. Right, let's get into this. Risk versus reward. You do need to accept a level of risk in order to get a reward. So let's establish that first of all. It's going to be extremely hard to achieve anything without any type of a risk. Now, what are the types of risk? So I suppose when people talk about risk versus reward, originally are mainly they're thinking about money. They're thinking about finance. They're thinking about, investments, risking money and hopefully, getting a lot more back. Now it doesn't just have to be that. You might risk, obviously, your money, but you might risk your time. You might put a lot of time into something that might not come to fruition, might not work out for you, might end up being a load of waste of time if you haven't actually learned anything from it. You might, and this is a really, really common one, you might risk your mental health. Now, what do I mean by that? Some jobs are extremely stressful. Some goals are extremely stressful. And for that period of time, you could be inviting a lot of stress into your life. And if it doesn't work out for you, it could have been unnecessary stress. You could be risking your relationships. You could be risking your general lifestyle, I suppose. But that might boil down to the risking the money as well. So you need to think about your goals and you need to weigh up the risks versus the rewards. But it doesn't have to just mean investing or business or money. It can be any of those things. The size of the risk versus the reward, has something to do with it. And generally, the bigger the risk, potentially the bigger the reward. Smaller risks might get smaller rewards. Larger risks might get larger rewards. I understand that there could, be contrary viewpoints to that, but that's generally how it goes. The bigger the risk, potentially the bigger the reward. Salaries, by the way, are based on risk as well in many jobs. Many people think that salaries are based on skills, which they can be, and on experience, which of course they can be as well. But there's many jobs, there's many careers and vocations that, pay large salaries based on the risk involved in the job. And that risk could be, the danger of the job, people who are working, crane operators who are working in tall cranes. Obviously it's skill, but obviously there's a risk as well. And, not everybody is going to be happy with those heights. The same with people who work, deep sea diving, or, who rescue, people from caverns, maybe not the rescuing, they might be volunteering, but you understand people that, are specialist drilling in close confined spaces, caves, etc., etc. There's many jobs that are dangerous that people will get paid larger amounts of money because they're dangerous, because of those dangerous risks. Now, there's many jobs that have high salaries, and they have high salaries despite the skill and despite the experience, because everybody knows they are very stressful jobs. And despite the attractive salary, a lot of people wouldn't actually take on the job and wouldn't take on the stress of that job. Or if they did, they would be looking at it for a short window of time, so that they could hopefully get out with their mental health intact and, a couple of years of, a high salary. So there's many high jobs, and I'm talking about, people who are high up in corporate structures, various people in positions that a lot of people might envy. They have very difficult jobs, and if you were given the opportunity, you mightn't necessarily swap. They mightn't necessarily have taken on board the job that they do if they had actually known the level of stress and the risk involved to their mental health as well as everything else. It is important to assess your risk, to know your risk, to know yourself. If you understand what makes you tick, if you can understand the level of risk that makes you comfortable or uncomfortable, it's going to greatly help you with your goals. I mean, it helps to do whatever internal work you need to do to try to figure it out. If you don't already know, obviously you can do some online tests. Most brokers will put you through some type of an investor risk profile test to see where you stand in regarding, investments and stuff like that, to see if you can tolerate, what your appetite for risk is, whether you can tolerate high risk or whether you want, slower, more safe, comfortable returns. And, linking your personality to and your appetite for risk to your goals can greatly help you succeed. There's no point in you, undertaking something with massive risk if you don't have the appetite for it, if that's going to make your life absolutely miserable and you're not going to see that end goal. There's absolutely no point in doing that. And the same with it, if you're looking at your risk profile and you think that you've been playing it too safe and you have an appetite for a little bit more risk, then that should be the kick up your butt to get you moving and to do something maybe a little bit more risky. Taking chances, they do fatigue people, so when you're taking chances and you're there's a lot of risk in your life, you can forgive yourself for being tired, and it's quite all right to be fatigued of risk, whether, physically fatigued, mentally or emotionally fatigued. That's okay as well. You just recharge and you come back at it. Everyday risk, hopefully adds up over the long term to, a patient reward, to being rewarded for your patience. So this is the part that people struggle with, that, they feel the struggle every day. They feel the risks every day, that they have to take in order to try to get ahead. And with most goals, it's a slow burner. Most goals, it's over a long period of time. And if you lose focus of the end result, it's very hard to withstand the punishment on a day-to-day basis that risks can bring your way, that life can bring your way, and the sacrifices. So that's why it's very important to have a very clear goal, and one that's absolutely true to your heart and your mind, so that when you're finding the risks and the struggle and the sacrifice on a daily basis difficult, you can remind yourself of the bigger picture, and it helps you to continue. When we're talking about risks as well, I'm not talking about reckless risk. I mean, that doesn't make sense. We're talking about calculated risks. So calculated risks are still risks. You're trying to take as much of the risk out of it, but it's impossible. If you're going to achieve anything that's, any way worthwhile in achieving, there is going to be risk. And even calculating the risk doesn't eliminate, black swan events or things that could just happen, or just life in general. So yeah, you do your homework, you do your research, you do your figures, you do your due diligence, you work out every avenue, every scenario, every outcome, And you try to really plan so that you're calculating it in your risk taking and not just reckless. Reckless risk taking, sure, is just gambling, and why that might be okay for entertainment purposes, and it might work out now and again. The odds of winning when you're gambling are a hell of a lot lower than when you're to win at, calculated risk taking. Now beware. I know I've just talked about calculated risks. But beware of analysis paralysis. There's so many people that think stuff through so much that it never actually occurs. They fall in love with the process of due diligence and doing their homework and doing their figures, that, even that can put them off actually taking action and actually, actively pursuing the risk in order to pursue the goal. So don't get caught up in that type of mental paralysis that's going to hinder your process. So calculated risk, think about it, do your due diligence, but there comes a point where you're going to have to, there's no avoiding it, you're going to have to act in order to be able to achieve. You're going to have to act and take those risks. A lot of people, if you read any of the studies or any of the books that, deal with people on their last years of life, a lot of them do, and the majority do report that, a deathbed regret is not taking enough risks. And I suppose if you look at your life now, with hindsight, I think most of us would kind of look back and go, I should have, taken a few more risks. There was risks. Obviously, hindsight is a wonderful thing, but I'm sure there's areas there that you can look in your life and if I'd only done this or I'd only done that, I could potentially be in a better position today than the one that I'm in. So I think that's normal. I think that's a natural thought process. I think it's human behavior. But if you keep that in the back of your mind, that in the future you're probably going to be looking back with some type of regret that you didn't take enough risks, maybe that's enough to give you the motivation to take those risks now and to put a proper plan in place. What happens to a lot of people is, what we've discussed many times before, the fear of failure. Your plan obviously should entail options of what to do if, you don't succeed, or if the worst happens, or, if the risks don't equal the reward. Yeah, you should absolutely have those plans in place. Option A, B, C. Being fully invested in option A and really make it work. Don't have one foot in and one foot out. But remember what we just said in the point previous. A deathbed regret should be more of a driving force than a fear of failure. And it's the same with a fear of haters. There's so many good people out there, very skilled, very talented, who are afraid to do certain things because they're worried about what people are going to say and what people are going to think. That is absolutely something you're going to have to conquer to move forward, because it's just a fact of life. Everybody is not going to like you. Everybody is not going to talk favorably about you. And for every moment you give that a thought, it's a wasted moment that you're not putting towards your career and your goals. Yes, everybody has to pay their dues. So you do have to accept, the sacrifice, accept the risk, or else, are you even serious enough about your goal? And sometimes making that decision can prevent you from going down the wrong path. If you want to do something and then you realize that you're not willing to pay the sacrifice to do it, then it's not a proper goal. And that's great, because you haven't wasted any time pursuing something, because you know that you're not prepared to pay that sacrifice. So therefore, something that you really, truly, genuinely want to achieve, or to succeed in, in your heart, in your mind, you will absolutely be prepared to, accept the sacrifice and accept the risk, as I said, on a day-to-day basis over a long period of time. As your success increases, maybe you will face less risk, for the rewards. Maybe it won't, you won't pay as heavy a price to achieve. Maybe the rewards won't cost as much. But maybe you'll just simply increase the size of your risk and aim for higher rewards, because you can lean into the process. You can accept the risk. You can accept the sacrifice. You can begin to like it. That risk and that sacrifice can make you feel alive and make you feel like there's something worth achieving. So while a lot of people might avoid the feeling of that risk and sacrifice, if you can conquer it, you might even start to enjoy it. You might even embrace it. And when things are even easier for you to achieve things, that you have the less risk and less sacrifice in your life, you may embrace more risk and more sacrifice by simply thinking bigger. Speaking of thinking, think, plan, visualize, and then pull the trigger. Start the ball rolling. Action. Who dares wins, but do go into it with your eyes wide open. Thank you for listening. I'm Roundhouse Rob, the Success Sensei. Life is a fight you can enjoy and win. Bowing out.
This has been the Success Sensei, fighting the winning fight. So add us, subscribe, like, and comment. Keep those hands up and keep moving forward.